What's going on, guys? It's Mike for Sim Racing 604, and today I am talking about this CUPRA Leon E-Racer, the first all-electric tin top and the newest addition to Raceroom Racing Experience. This release is garnering a lot of negative attention, and everywhere I look there's message boards where people are hating on this car, so I'm going to get into what this car is, why it might be garnering all that negative attention, and then whether or not I think you should buy it. So let's go ahead and get into it. Okay guys, so we're going to keep it fairly simple with this one. I'm going to be taking this CUPRA Leon out to Imola for a few laps while I talk a little bit and give a review of the car. So as mentioned off the top, this one is garnering a lot of attention and we're going to get into that momentarily, but first off, just a little overview of the car. So it's billed as the first all-electric race car, and I don't really agree with that. I think it's perhaps an issue of semantics, because I would consider Formula E to be, an all-electric race car, but perhaps this is the first all-electric tin top, and I can't even confirm that. But let's just go with it. Let's just say this is, in fact, what it's billed to be, and that is the first all-electric race car. So, in theory, it could serve as a vanguard. We see things year by year going more and more electric, so perhaps this is something we'll look back on in 5, 10, or 20 years and say, wow, that was the first all-electric race car. 670 horsepower roughly is the output, and 0 to 100 kilometers an hour, just about 3 seconds. Top speed 270 kilometers an hour. You'll see a little bit later that I put this around the Nordschleife in about 7 minutes, on my first go, no less. So this is a fast car. So why is it garnering all of this negative attention? Every time I go into a message board, I see people trashing this car. And I think it comes primarily on two fronts. First of all, it's an all-electric race car, and as most of us know, the racing community is slow to embrace the trend towards electric motors being in race cars. And I will say, even though I'm older than a lot of you, I'm not one of those people that's strictly stuck on petrol or gas being the only solution for race cars. I daily drive a hybrid. I think Teslas are fantastic vehicles. I think the current generation of F1 with the hybrid powertrain is doing amazing things, and from a technical perspective, I think that's fantastic. So I'm not one of these people that's like, a race car must be powered by gas and it must have 10 cylinders or anything like that. I'm certainly open to electric motors being in race cars, but I think what we see... Whoops, forgot to switch into high gear there. I think what we're seeing is... sort of the expectations of an electric race car outperforming the current capabilities of batteries and perhaps electric motor efficiency. So I consider it sort of a tetrad of capabilities when it comes to batteries and electric motors in race cars. So yeah, high output in one corner, long lasting in another corner, and lightweight in another corner. So you can kind of pick two of those three. So if you look at the first generation of Formula E cars, for example, reasonably high output, reasonably lightweight, but they didn't last very long. And then we see the move away from that with the newer generation of Formula E cars, and they seem to be getting, more charged. They're able to drive for longer, and they kept it lightweight, but of course the Formula E car nowhere near the power of like something like a Formula 3. So again, you have those dependencies, and you seem to be able to only choose 2 out of the 3 with the current battery technology. But what we have here with this CUPRA Leon E-Racer is kind of high output and long lasting. So again, 670 horsepower, that's a lot for a tin top, and long-lasting battery. This is meant to race. You'll see my battery warning come up at some point during these laps, but for right now it's not up. So long-lasting, reasonably high output, but it's very heavy. This thing is about 1,680 kilograms. That's somewhere in the neighborhood of 700 or 800 pounds heavier than its TCR counterpart. So that's the trade-off for that. And so I think all of these factors kind of go into why electric race cars have not yet been embraced. I think the technology isn't quite there. Yes, the sound factors in at some point. People aren't going to really get behind the whine of an electric motor versus the roar of a, V8, V10, V12 engine. There's just something, especially if you've been a race fan for a long time and maybe you have childhood memories. Chances are those childhood memories of race cars, of seeing them live, a lot of it is tied to the sound. There's definitely something to that. We don't get that with electric race cars. Totally understandable. But that's only one factor, but I think more it's the capabilities of the current generation electric cars that's really holding these back from being embraced by the racing community. So that is one thing. The second thing is relating not so much to the car, but more to Raceroom Racing Experience. And for those of you who know me, I really like Raceroom. I believe it was On the Grid that did a video recently, or a couple months ago, about Raceroom being the overall best racing sim. And I think there's a case to be made for that. I don't know if I 100% agree, but I think he stated his case very well, and you could certainly get behind that. But Raceroom, I like Raceroom, but I don't necessarily think that this is the direction they should have gone with a new content release. And when I did my review on the latest track, the Aragon, Motorland Aragon, I believe it was called, somebody commented that Raceroom was Sector 3 rather, was answering the question that nobody asked by adding Motorland Aragon. There's any number of tracks that could have added, but they chose this, I guess, somewhat obscure, mostly intended for MotoGP style track, and people were like, why on earth did you choose that track of all the tracks? So I think that's sort of the case here. Like, I would have loved to have seen the GTE field filled out a little bit more. I know there's a relationship with Chevrolet, so perhaps the C8R could have made an appearance here in Raceroom, or perhaps, fill out the Group C a little bit more. There's only 2 cars in that class right now, I believe. Having the 787B, I think, would be incredible. I think Raceroom would absolutely nail that car. But they went a different direction. They went with sort of almost a concept car with this CUPRA Leon E-Racer. Not something many people were hoping for. I don't even know where this races or on what tracks. Again, it could serve as a vanguard. We might look back on this and think it's a piece of automotive history, but for right now, it just doesn't seem to fill in or answer the question that the community was asking for. I think a lot of us were really, really hoping that GTE class would be filled out sooner. But no news on that. We got an E-Racer instead. So guys, I think that's the second reason that this is garnering some negative attention. So I'll close this out with one final piece on whether or not I think you should buy this car and my overall review of the car. So I think for what it is, it's quite well done. I gotta say, the whine of the electric motor is, as you would expect the whine of an electric motor to be. I think being a heavier, almost TCR kind of car, but you sort of have to manage the inertia around the track because it is almost 1,700 kilograms. And I think for what it is, it's quite nicely done from Raceroom. The problem is I just don't see the replay value in this car. If there was a full field, if other manufacturers had entered the all-electric tin top game, then I think this would be very, very compelling and make for some interesting races. But as of right now, it's just a one-make race, and I honestly can't see myself coming back to this too often. So a lot of people complaining in the forums about it being just an understeery nightmare. I don't find it that bad. You saw a bit of understeer there, but it's not like it can't be controlled. It just you have to nail your braking point. If you're even a little bit late with your braking point, this thing's just going to sail right through the corner. But overall, it's not nearly as bad, I think, as some of the forums or some of the comments in the forums are making it out to be. I don't actually hate the way it drives. I had a good time with it at Nordschleife and completed a full lap of Nords on only my second attempt, so it's not that bad. I've certainly got more understeery cars. So overall, not a bad driving car, but again, it just kind of fits into some weird space in racing that I don't really care about, and perhaps in time I will care. Perhaps we'll look back at this as a piece of history, but as of right now, it doesn't really do much. So my review is that it's nicely done for what it is, but not necessarily needed in the world of sim racing. So That's going to do it, guys. Let me know, please, what are your thoughts on electric race cars overall? Do you watch Formula E, or would you watch an all-electric GT race? Let me know where you're at with things. Thank you guys so much for listening to my ramblings, and we will see you next time.